Splendid Abodes, the official podcast of Toronto Thelema. Exploring, if you will, practical philosophy, from the science and the workings of the mind to spirituality, esotericism, and magic.
Stooping down, dipping my wings, I came into the darkly splendid abodes. The Wake World, or Liber 95, is included as the first part of Aleister Crowley's book, Konx Om Pax. Originally written as a bedtime story for his daughter, Lola Zaza, it is an allegory for the initiatory ascent of the Tree of Life. Michael and I will compare our past explorations of the Divine Feminine as we delve into this tale for Babes and Sucklings.
Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Love is the law. Love under will.
Welcome back, Michael. Today we're going to be talking about...
Wake World.
Wake World.
Wake World.
Yeah, wake up!
First published 1907 and by the eminent Aleister Crowley.
Mm-hmm. So 1907, that's a good year, good vintage. It's the period just around and just after he's receiving these holy books as well, like Liber 65 and Liber 7 and whatnot.
Yeah. And there's interesting content overlap between some of that stuff. Even the Liber 418, which is only a couple of years after this. I think the stuff we just read from Liber 418 about the golden virgin, the princess, is all an interesting analog. There's some. Something of the two stories flavoring each other.
Yeah, it's almost like we chose this book for a reason. I guess we kind of did want to keep hitting on this this theme of the woman as it appears throughout Thelema, particularly sort of tying it to, I guess you might parse it differently than me. I was kind of thinking it's sort of like finding themes connected to Lilith, themes connected to the the Shekinah, and this princess, as you say, from Liber 418.
I was walking in here and I was trying to devise an opening gamut for us today, and I don't know how far I got, but you can give me notes as we go. But there's these archetypes of the Divine Feminine that we've sort of checked in with a little bit over the course of the season. Everyone will be familiar with the story of Adam and Eve, or Adam and Cheva, and how, she's told not to eat apples. She eats some apple and ends up getting evicted from the Garden of Eden. But that's also a creation story. It's also she. As a result of this faux pas, she becomes the sort of mother of all of humanity. If she's the first woman, then we're all descended from the first woman. And so things like pain during childbirth and enmity between the woman and the snake, and the, being forced to labor to till the earth, this is sort of our condition. And so it's part of the creation. It's like another creation story in Genesis, right? Is this relation. And a little bit later on, maybe 100 years after Jesus, we read the Pistis Sophia, and there we have another woman who's aspiring, who's looking
This
up. Podcast
has been going on for a long time, by the way. Over 100-year periods we've covered.
We see a woman looking up beyond the 13th Aether, which is her station, to the treasury of light, and wondering and aspiring. And then because of that crime of aspiration, being hollowed out to create a whole race of demons. And then this is also ends up with Yaldabaoth creating the whole world. So it's another creation story that begins with the aspiration of a woman that is framed as like as a violation. And we also spoke about the story of Lilith from about, is it 1400, the alphabet of Rabbi Ben Salmon, where a woman doesn't want to take the submissive position during sex. She sees herself as equal to her partner, so she wants to be on top. She wants to be in the domineering position. And again, she's evicted from the garden and begins the story of creation by emanating all these shells of the dead and making the whole race of Lilot, that are the child-stealing demons that are even pre-biblical. Mm-hmm. And so, and so this is another case, I think, when we're looking at Konx Om Pax, or the wake world. We have another sort of divine feminine person here who is aspiring, and she's going to become. We talked a little bit last time about what it means to sit the princess upon the throne of the mother. It's much more explicit here as a metaphor for a personal initiation. But then she's Virgo Mundi, which is like virgin of the world in the footnotes, or various other things that mean like, Lola. She says she's called Lola because she is the key of delights. I looked it up. Lola is short for Dolores in Spanish, and Dolores means like Our Lady of Sorrows. Mm. And so the trance of sorrow is the key to all delights. So there's also a way in which Lola in Wake World is going to be the creation of the world as well. And what I think is an interesting difference is that while both kind of suffer various tortures, both Lola and the golden princess from 418, neither of them are framed as like having transgressed. It's like they aspire, but their aspire is not framed as like a crime against God. Mm-hmm. The world is created by the aspiration of women, which may be violent and may be dangerous and may be, very torturesome, but it's not criminal in the way that it is in the echoes of these other traditions. It removes that sort of criminal element, although she says she doesn't want to tell you anything about herself, so maybe we can, at a stretch, read something into why that might be. Yeah. But I don't know, I thought that was... I think there's a way in which we can put Lola Daydream, Lola Wide Awake into this divine feminine box and notice these particular differences between Thelema and like the rest of the Judean Christian tradition.
Yeah, and it seems like in this case, like the overall framework of this sort of story here is it's told from the first person point of view of Lola, and she seems to be representative of not just Crowley and his initiatory path, but sort of like the soul of the world, the Shekinah, the feminine principle, from the Malkuth sort of range being initiated up through the tree to be, as you say, placed on the throne of the mother. And basically going through the whole course of the tree on a little bit of a tour, which is representative of this path of initiation up the Sephirothan paths.
Even at a more basic level, I was thinking that like when you people talk about the divine feminine, like, the way the grifters talk about it now, like being in your divine feminine, they think of being like nurturing and protective and like caring for children, and like it's very mother oriented. But the stories about the divine feminine that we've been reading over the course of this, this little journey we've been on, have not been about that. They've been about aspiration leading to violence, leading to the creation of the to the creation of the world. And so the divine feminine is like the, at least for us so far, it seems to be about the aspiration, like mystical aspiration, and the grueling lifestyle that it seems to be the motivating force for like,
and an
for
important
like
element of it seems to be the fact that we have like not just aspiration, but like from the feminine in this case representing the passive sort of as opposed to the active. If we think of these as energies, so like the active role is taken on. It seems like there's interchange. Like she's not entirely passive. She needs to kiss her lover in order to move on to the next, or ask her lover to kiss her to move on to the next sphere and whatnot. But the active role, so to speak, is the angel, who is in this represented by the fairy prince, and who is also, she references as having 5 V's in his name. So that's, specifically VVVVV, who we've talked about before, who's Crowley's Magister Templi name, Master of the Temple name. But it also seems to represent a distinct level of consciousness or a distinct entity or something along those lines.
Yeah, there's something going on there, right? Because, we've already said that for Crowley, Viver Universum Vivis Victi is not only his name as Master of the Temple, but it's also like a part of his consciousness that's always been there, guiding him and dragging him along. And even though the Master of the Temple initiation happens in Binah, in the third Sphira, he's the Lola's guardian angel, Lola's fairy prince, is going to say that I belong in Chokmah, and that you should be in Binah because that's the closest bedchamber to my bedchamber, so we can sneak in on each other at night. So actually, it's like in at least in this story, it's like Magus consciousness coming down to kind of like pull everybody up. At least as high as, the crossing of the abyss. Do you have any further introductory remarks? We should say what the book is.
Well, the book is, we did we did touch on that, is Wake World. I don't know if you're...
So the story is of, it's a fable about a girl named Lola Daydream who's, she says she's 17 years old, but she comes off quite a bit younger in writing, and it's written as diaries of hers or as letters to the reader. And it's very short. It's in 4 chapters, and each chapter is another sort of step or series of steps on the pathway to initiation, but written as a very loosely veiled allegory, sort of a through the looking glass type story, where she leaves her world, which is the real world, which she calls the dream world, and goes into a dream, which is the real world, the world of waking. So we have the same kind of like juxtaposition between waking and dreaming that we saw in the George MacDonald in the Leith book. And in her dream of being more awake than waking, she goes through the process of initiation. So the first kind of like... the first from
well, we're broken into 3 sections from what I remember. It could be 4, but it's like we have initially the leading up towards Tifereth.
Yeah, so from the word I was trying to remember was Malkuth. From Malkuth to Netzach is the first section, and then the initiation into Fereth is the second section, and then the third section is the adepti grades, and maybe leading up to the to the Master of the Temple attainment, and then it finishes by summarizing what the supernal triangle looks like from the perspective of a Master of the Temple.
And it gives you this layout. It's almost like, because George Cecil Jones and Aleister Crowley formed the AA system in 1906. They founded it in 1906, and they did so as sort of a replacement for the, at the time, defunct Golden Dawn system, which had schismed and whatnot. So it's almost like this is a parable for what that system is. So
exactly right. And she doesn't call them Sephiroth. She calls them rooms. They're like rooms in the palace. Mm-hmm. And then she doesn't call them connecting pathways. She calls them paths or corridors or hallways.
My father's house has many rooms. Yeah. My father's mansion has many rooms.
And so she'll describe, rather confusingly, being in this place that's all green, or in this place that's dark and the ceiling's really low, or, explaining the astral environment
it's
in
like
terms of architecture.
Visions or something.
Exactly right. I mean, what I was going to say is you could identify which path related to which tarot card, which letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which path on the Tree of Life, and use her descriptions as sort of an inspiration to begin getting some sort of
Yeah.
imaginary vision. And often she's just describing the tarot card, and then there's interesting places where she isn't doing that, and then those are worth talking about.
Yeah. Now, I'm assuming you have the same copy that I have here. Maybe not. Mine says it was first published in 1907, edited by Joseph William Merrick.
Yeah, I have a Joseph William Merrick, but
Okay.
perhaps
This kind of annoys me, though, because it's like this is a good example of why if the OTO, they made it their project to try to control the literary estate of Crowley and to publish the books and that sort of thing, and their failure to publish over the last several years has made it so you end up with people, as the copyrights expire and all that sort of thing, you get just randos kind of like publishing the stuff through print on demand stuff or whatever, and that's great to make it available still, but it's frustrating. And this is a good example of where it's like annoying, because if the OTO was doing it, then you'd know that they would actually be putting the effort into making sure it was all done properly and it was authoritative and everything like that. In this case, this fellow includes, good on him for putting it all together, but it's like for instance, the thing that annoys me, I haven't read through the entire book because there's other essays in here as well, but the little Latin translations are so badly done. They're not, like, obviously he doesn't have Latin and he's just, I don't know, Googling or something like that. And it's pretty, it's not reliable.
Do we think that the footnotes are original, or do we think that he did the footnotes?
Well, the footnotes are original.
Okay.
I would assume. And I believe I've read them elsewhere as well, of course, like the Latin of the footnotes.
Okay.
But the hard brackets, I have to assume, are his translations.
I see.
So, for instance, like some of them are pretty straightforward, so they're not a problem or anything like that. Like the Virgo Mundi, he says World Virgin. Good enough. That'll do the job. But, and then like other places...
I've just opened to the last page of this, and there's a footnote that says Sapientia. Sapientia. And then in the hard brackets, second house Chokmah or wisdom. And I don't know, do you think that that's a translation from the Latin, or just to clarify about where we are on the tree of life? And you think that those hard brackets are
so it's Domus,
Merrick, not...
Domus Secundum, which is, so Domus and then the Roman numeral 2. And so his translation there is second house, which is correct.
Okay.
And he's put in parentheses Chokmah, which of course is Hebrew for wisdom. And then he put or wisdom because the V, this is correct. He's not wrong here.
Okay.
The V it's a shortening of vel, which is or. And sapientia is the Latin word for wisdom.
Okay, so he's done an okay job, but it's his job, and in some places it seems like a hack job.
In some places it's clearly a hack job, yeah. So
which is not a disaster. I mean, you're right that it's nice that some people are doing it, and we appreciate that it's being done. The point is that there's an alternate universe version of this, where instead of being so protective, instead of realizing that, the copyrights are expiring, so let's not publish anything so people don't know what is and is not in a public domain, we obfuscate all of this and protect our copyrights, and then maybe sell a few copies of things that are out of print and, make a $1,500 here or whatever, by defending our copyrights with obfuscation. That's what I think. I mean, that's not allegedly, I'm alleging personally that that's what's going on, that maybe they would be doing more publishing if they actually held the copyrights, the OTO. But instead of just not publishing and allowing people to put out things piecemeal, saying, is this public domain, waiting for litigation, and then realizing they're safe. And then we get all this shotgun of crap out, that we would still get the shotgun of crap because the work is in the public domain and people are curious about it and want to work with it. And that is a good thing. But there could also be authoritative versions
Yeah.
coming down from the OTO that were more expensive and heavier and nicely spell checked.
Yeah.
and that work wouldn't all have to be done by just one person. Hymenaeus Bea doesn't have to be the only OTO only OTO editor and publisher. So yes, it's that in that way it's disappointing, but it's not necessarily Merrick's fault. But Merrick is a
I would personally say, like,
of,
if it's going to be like, translating Latin just by doing Google searches on the words or something like that, or, and it's mishmash that he doesn't know what he's doing, then he should just leave it without the translations in that case, unless he's going to do a good job of it. But I mean, this is the nature of like print on demand stuff. Anybody can print on demand, and they are making money off of it. That's why they're really doing it. Like, I mean, in this case, this is like, I think the impetus is because, well, you're supposed to be reading this as part of the student curriculum, and that's great. Yeah, so it's nice to have access to it. He does have like appendices where he's talking about Crowley's law and obviously giving his interpretation of things, which again is fine, except that it's kind of like, okay, if this is being given as student material, great. They should be reading the material itself and not somebody else's opinion who is probably not very reliable as an authoritative source.
I think even though the text itself is in the public domain, there's a way in which these individual publications are still, trademarkable, and, like if I put a cover on a book that's my design, I trademark the cover, for example. Or like if Crowley's material might be public domain, but if I do a bunch of preface, then the preface is mine.
Yeah.
So it may be that that there's some way in which these Etsy publishers are required to write something in order to evidence that it's their own copy.
Maybe, yeah.
And so they just write it as fast as they can, maybe even just to get their own trademark on it so that they can release it and make the money. You know?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually not very poorly put together either, because there's definitely print-on-demand stuff that I've seen that's like terrible layouts, terrible, spelling and grammar and stuff like that. And even if there's mistakes in here, it's not badly presented or anything like that.
And the cover is original. Like, the cover is nice, and I don't know. I think I like it.
I like it well enough, but like I say, that's the thing. If you don't have Latin,
it's okay to say there's problems with it.
Yeah, if you don't have Latin and somebody's translating it for you, you're taking their authority. You're not really looking at the Latin. You're just looking at the English translations, and you're like wondering what the hell to make out of certain sentences, like divine light arrives under tribe or species. What does that mean?
No. And what's the Latin?
The Latin is advenit lux sub tribus speciebus.
Sounds like vaguely, my virgin ears, sounds like a literal translation, but what do you think it means?
The light has come under three images.
I see.
So he's taken tribus as tribe, which is actually in three, and speciebus is in... Species does derive from this word, so it's etymologically from the same root, but it's like species is like an image of something.
I see.
So this is why it's used metaphorically for different species.
Right.
So this is what I mean. It's like it's just sort of like patchwork kind of translation that's not reliable. So if you don't have,
our word species means something like forms.
It's different images under different forms.
Like
exactly
animals that partake of this form.
Which is fun. It's useful etymologically. It actually gives you a greater insight into the language and its usage and that sort of thing. But I mean, in this case. Oh, there's also like the one above that is like, why among dead the uncompanioned living? No, this is he, Rose. That doesn't, like, he didn't even take the time to try and make that into something that made any sense.
Right.
It's just literally, I don't know if it's, I don't know what the case is, but the Latin is cur inter, I'm going into Russian again.
Very good. Excellent.
Cur inter, I can't say inter for some reason. Cur inter mortuos vivum petes. which is like
Corinto mortuis
yeah.
vivum petis.
Yeah, exactly. Nicely done. It's why do you seek to live among the dead?
And what's his take on that?
Why among dead the uncompanioned living? I don't even know how they got that. And then the other portion of the sentence is non est hic ille resurrexit. And that's, this is not him. He has resurrected.
What page are we on? Because I didn't even notice all this Latin stuff.
So 38, footnote number 3.
Yeah, so at some point between your edition and my edition, some of these footnotes were changed because I don't have this material.
Oh, do you even have the footnotes?
I have footnotes, but I don't have.
Interesting.
I don't think I have
translations?
this. I have footnotes and I have some Latin, but I don't. I don't have. I don't. At least in page 38, I don't have this particular thing that you're seeing.
Yeah, I would say if you're going to do such a bad job of translating it, you might as well just leave it untranslated. But I mean, if he doesn't know Latin, then he doesn't even know that he's translating it poorly. Although that's still like, why among dead the uncompanioned living? No, this is he rose. Doesn't really mean anything unless you kind of can get at, and it seems to be like, I think it's biblical. It's got to be a biblical quote from the Vulgate where it's like Jesus is risen from the dead and they stumble upon a stranger who says, why do you seek him among the living? Or why do you seek him among the dead when he is resurrected?
Oh, it's just that the pagination is slightly different. I have that on 45.
Oh, okay.
And it's not one of the footnotes I even bothered checking because I was looking mostly for where it thought the paths and sephira were. So I wasn't worrying about footnotes that didn't refer to that kind of section.
Yeah. Does it have the English translation there?
Why among dead the uncompanioned living?
Yeah.
No, this is he rose. This is he. Sorry, no, this is he.
Rose.
Semicolon. Rose.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is like stuff like that just drives me nuts. And there's others where it's like there's the just above that as well. Number 2, pedum et flagellum Osiridis, and that's sort of saying like where she's talking about. I guess the sentence it's referencing is, but I couldn't go away without something of his, referring to the corpse it's in the tomb. So I took his shepherd's staff and a little whip with blood on it. And the note is translated from pedum et flagellum Osiridis. It's translated feet and whip of Osiris. So the whip is okay. It actually says in the passage shepherd's staff, and that's what it is. It's a shepherd's crook, is pedum. It comes from the root for foot in Latin, so it's like I can see where that could get mixed up, but it's feet of Osiris. How does that come into play?
Yeah, and I did read that footnote and was confused by it. I thought there's an ankh also mentioned in the passage.
So you think maybe foot
so
strap,
I thought it maybe was like
sandal
something
strap.
to do with the sandals. But so yeah, it's very helpful to know what you're actually talking about. I think what's going on, there's a few ways to do translation, right? Like if you're translating a piece of poetry, for example, you can translate in such a way that you emphasize the rhyme and meter and make sure that your English matches Sophocles' Greek in terms of the pacing so that you get the music of it. But you have to sacrifice a lot of literal meaning in order to do that. So you can also translate with emphasis on literal meaning, and then you lose the poetry. And so you may have to then make up your own poetry, which is what a lot of people do, is try to get something that sounds poetic, even if it's not doesn't sound like Greek poetry. And in this case, it looks like what he's done is worried less about how it hits an English ear, less about meaning, and just done his best to translate everything word for word.
Exactly.
So you get the feeling of the Latin, but at the expense of any clarity, and also he's got some of the words wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just the fact that we have that semicolon rose, that's like, could have easily been made the smallest adjustment to that with any kind of like looking back over what he's done with his translation and tried to like, assess or infer the meaning of what's being said. But it doesn't appear that that's happened. It's just literally chunking these, words over and then leaving it and saying,
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's what drives me crazy about this particular thing, and I wanted to address it because that's the state of affairs, right? This is why it's nice to have authoritative publishers or editors involved with the books and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're listening and you have any say in how the OTO spends its money, maybe some publishing effort, even of material that's in the public domain, would be beneficial.
Yeah, I think people would buy it over, some of these other things if they could make it available, like just for the, it's like the blue brick, I'd rather buy the blue brick that's put out with all the notes and everything like that with him and IS Beta, but rather than like the Stephen Skinner.
I have both.
Mm-hmm.
I have both, and I would have both again.
Stephen Skinner, but it's like and if you have both, great. Like I think
when people are making a serious effort to publish something, even if I don't particularly like it, I feel that effort should be, rewarded because I want more Thelemic publishing. So, so just the fact that I buy, Joseph Merrick's edition of Konx Om Pax or Stephen Skinner's edition of Magick Without Tears doesn't mean I won't also then buy whatever official glossy, nice hardcover thing comes out from the OTO. Like
that's
I
what
would
I mean,
be there. I would be available for having many copies of these various texts. I have a really nice. I don't know if anyone's seen this, but there's a clandestine publisher called Keep Silence.
Oh yeah.
And the it's instead of gems from the equinox, it's scans from the equinox. and so you can buy facsimile editions of the first or second edition of all the equinoxes, and they look nice on your shelf when you get a little.
Essentially, what I have there, that whole set of the, it's not that. This was published. My set of the Equinox, Volume 1 is it's from 1979. It was published, but it's all the original. It has the original advertisements and all that sort of thing. So it's not scans per se, but it's like it's the same,
right.
The same printing,
the
press
same material
stuff or whatever. Yeah,
but just the fact that I spent $400 on a facsimile edition from a Etsy publisher, doesn't mean I also wouldn't buy a new edition from the authoritative source.
Yeah. But anyway, enough bitching about publishing.
Darren, what did you like about it? What was your favorite thing about reading this time?
Mostly the fact that I don't have to read the Latin. I can just read the English translation.
Fuck off! Very good.
Sorry.
Very good.
All right. No, this is a. It's always fun to come back to these kinds of things as well, because it's like I say, it's giving a wonderful layout of the tree of life, and I mean, even this Joseph William Merrick, I think I scanned over his introduction, and that he was sort of saying how it's this is like recommended reading from the student, like it's required reading for the student grade, and it's nice to have it available. And I think he says something along the lines of that when he first read it, he was not in the mood for, sublime writings or whatever he describes it as. He was more into just getting into the nitty-gritty of doing magic ritual and stuff like that. So maybe he didn't appreciate it as much on that first reading. And I think that's fair. It's the type of thing when you're first reading it for the first time, you might feel like it's a bit more diversionary than what you're actually interested in, which is getting into the nuts and bolts kind of thing. But that's easy to, as a result, it's like, I'm sure he found the same thing, where it's like, once you actually do get into reading it, it's like, no, this is actually, this is helpful in a lot of ways, Yeah,
I mean, I don't like it. I think it's, I find the style a little draining, and it is just a map of the Tree of Life, and I don't find the adventure very adventuresome. I think it's just kind of
You know what? You're right. Fuck this book.
I feel it kind of goes point by point by point through the various paths and spheres
So it's a
on
little
the Tree
tedious,
of Life.
I guess.
So yeah, I do find it tedious. But the thing I liked most this time was coming to it with the Gnostic framework and imagining Lola as the princess, or imagining Lola as even Pistis Sophia, and thinking about that journey of like how Pistis Sophia communicates with Christ and gives all her various, confessions, and gradually works her way back up through the aeons to get to her right place again. And how this takes a different angle rather than focusing on the fall of the divine feminine. It's the restoration to. You can see it as the restoration to her proper place,
The redemption, like the pentacle.
and that. And so seeing various and there's little bits of philosophical stuff in here that's meaty too. Like it's fun when they're going through the path of Shin, the path of the Last Judgment, how they have all these coffins, and VVVVV, the fairy prince, says like this is the only way most people ever wake up.
Yeah.
And so this again,
They won't wake up for less.
And so
Trumpeting of the angels at the final judgment.
And again, I was thinking about the George MacDonald, right?
Yeah.
The room with rows upon rows upon rows of coffins, and how we're waiting for the Last Judgment to be woken up.
Yeah.
Crowley seems to be inspired by Alice in Wonderland, which is also on the reading list, but also by his own pretty well-developed sense of how initiation should work, and his ideas about what the AA should be and stuff like this. And I haven't looked at the front of this before and noticed that publication date of 1907, but it makes perfect sense because he's anticipating going through himself, whether consciously or subconsciously. As I said last month, I think his actual abyss crossing was a bit of a accident. They were trying to get Enochian aethers. They weren't necessarily trying to.
Well, keep in mind, because this is actually an interesting historical kind of subject matter, because George Cecil Jones acknowledged Crowley as being a master of the temple around this time, around like 1906, 1907, and Crowley felt it would be presumptuous to accept the title.
Yeah, and is there something to do with the fact that he's now the head of the order, that they need an eighth degree
like
in order to operate? Like they need someone who can be a prolocutor and not just
Yeah, because they would carry this idea forward with
from the Golden
Charles
Dawn,
Stanfield Jones and all that sort of thing as well, needing him to fill a certain role within the order.
It's the same reason Crowley thought Blavatsky was a master of the temple, not necessarily because he was analyzing all of her attainments and attributing this AA grade to her, but because she had founded an order, she needed an honorary eighth grade or eighth degree. So
yeah, so there is that question there as well, whether he, to some extent had attained that.
But then wanting to grow into it, to say like, okay, well, I have to have an honorary eighth degree for now to run the order, but as soon as possible, I should try to grow into those pants so that I can administrate things properly. But I think, and you corrected me last time, you're right that I think that's like the formal crossing. It does happen, and it does happen in a ritual context, and it's all the buttons are sewn on correctly. I just think that at the time,
they weren't.
It was a surprise.
Yeah, just doing the Enochian at all. He describes it as being like, oh, look, lo and behold, I happen to have everything at hand that we need in order to do these things. So,
but so let's read a little bit of this. I don't want to read every single word on the page because it's long. And that's right. Let's look at the first couple of paragraphs to talk about what's going on with her. Maybe this femininity versus masculinity, or set the stage with our characters and get some sort of sense of the quality of the prose here. She says, "My name is Lola because I am the key of delights." I've already mentioned this, how Lola means sorrows. And so being the key of delights is an interesting philosophical thing that I'm sure, been over before. "And the other children in my dream call me Lola Daydream. When I am awake, you see, I know that I am dreaming, so they must be very silly children, don't you think? There are people in the dream, too, who are quite grown up and horrid, but really, the really important thing is the wake-up person. And there is only one." And so, yeah, again, here I'm thinking of the George MacDonald with the adults being horrible and the wake world being a dream. Then a little further down, he says, "My fairy prince is a dark boy and very comely. I think everyone must love him, and yet everyone is afraid. He looks through one, just as if one had no clothes on in the garden of God. And he has made one, and one could do nothing except in the mirror of his mind." So this is an elaboration maybe of the idea of the wake world being a dream world. You know, one of the ways to do idealism, objects are just ideas, is like Berkeley, who Crowley references in other places. Bishop Berkeley will say that when we're not paying attention to objects, the world still has continuity because that then exists in the mind of God. And so Viver Universum Vivus Victi is stabilizing the dream by having us all in his mind. One could do nothing except in the mirror of his mind. He never laughs or frowns or smiles because whatever he sees beyond as well, so nothing ever happens. Here we have Parmenides saying that all of creation is just one mass of undifferentiated stuff. Parmenides talks about the world as a big white sphere of water, and there's no, points of tension or points of relief. It's all just smooth. And we have a Nietzschean idea as well of like the eternal return and how everything always, we live it, we reincarnate, but we reincarnate in our own bodies and our own lives and do everything exactly the same way again and again and again. So there's this continuity that I've spoken of before where, we know there's only one possible past. I also believe there's only one possible future and that we're all radically fated. And so, Viver Universum Vivus Victi does not perceive the world as change. He perceives the world as one stable continuum because he sees the consequences of all actions and the causes of all occurrences all at the same time. So when he's looking at you in 4 dimensions, sort of across all of time. So this is some attempt to capture the perspective that the Magister Templi, not the Magister Templi, but the Magus must have when he's speaking creation into existence with his sort of one word. This is what it's like to be very, very high up on the tree of life and very deep in the path of initiation. His mouth is redder than any rose you ever saw. I wake up quite when we kiss each other, and there is no dream anymore. But when it is not trembling on mine, I see kisses on his lips as if he were kissing someone that one could not see. So he's not just Crowley's high adept self, but he's an initiator for many people. This being, despite being one of Crowley's personal names, is also sort of a reality that exists sort of across.
We'll have
the planes of initiation.
Other things popping up that'll possibly elucidate or build on this idea as well.
And then she introduces the story saying that the fairy prince is my lover, and one day he will come for me for good and ride away with me and marry me. And so this is going to be the story of kind of their wedding day. What do you think of all that?
Well, it's, I guess one thing we didn't really hit on the head, but, if you read this text, you'll discover it very quickly. But Lola Daydream, the whole idea is kind of a fun one that has some allusions to it as well, which is that she's in the daydream when she's sleeping, it's like it's implying that that's actually what our conscious reality is. So like you and I right now speaking are daydreaming. And as we go into these higher, more exalted states, we are becoming more and more awake rather than asleep. Later on, we'll see that all of these houses of the tree will have some dreaminess in them, except for the very first house.
That's right. And I think there's something that I think people usually get a little bit wrong when they go to start exploring occult subjects, where if you look up at any like YouTube video that tries to teach astral projection, they will begin by trying to teach you how to do lucid dreaming. And it's sort of seen as a continuum that, you get into dreaming, and then you get into trying to remember your dreams, and then you get into trying to be aware that you're dreaming, and then to control your dreams, and then to explore the world in dreams, with your mind awake and your body asleep. And it's seen as a that by going through the dream, you become a person who can astral project and then travel around. And although I don't know, I suspect that this is wrong, because when we dream, we're going from our dream world into a deeper state that's just created by our minds, that's just an even deeper dream. And what we want to be doing with astral travel is seeing behind the daydream of our perceptions to what's a little bit more real from the astral perspective. So the astral travel is not a dream. It's going up into a more awakened place. So you can do lucid dreaming, but it's not the same thing as traveling in the
Well, I guess a
body
good
of light.
analogy for that is in Liber, it talks about the idea of astral travel, and it does so in a way where it says you can move around on, if you get out of body, you can move around on this plane, but you're not going to get anything of real value, so you have to keep rising and pushing towards higher levels in order to actually get something worthwhile.
Yeah, and that's correct, and that's what Lola's doing here. Is she's going ever up into,
and it's always a going
realms
as well,
finer and more mysterious, more delicate. But the idea that we live inside a dream and that we're polluted by our sense perceptions.
But who is the dreamer?
Yeah, exactly. that we're polluted.
Is it the candy-colored clown they call the Sandman?
We don't get to the real world just by going to sleep and having a dream. That's just a deeper dream. Magic, meditation, astral travel should be about waking up beyond our sense perceptions, becoming more aware, more hyper aware of what is transcendental beyond our ability to perceive it sensually.
Yeah, granted, in order to discover what that is or what that means, you need some kind of engagement at the same time. So that's going, I think just doing stuff doesn't hurt,
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but actually that subject of the going, by the way, will be, I'm kind of interested in some of the ways in which, I know that you're going chronologically here, I'm kind of like enjoying some of the things that come out of this that are thelemic points of interest. So in for instance, that idea of the going, the idea to go, in Liber Aleph, Crowley uses... He gives an explication on the powers of the Sphinx, and he caps it off with the to go. Usually you have to dare, to know, to will, to keep silent. I'm fucking up the order, but it's like then he caps it off with something that you could attribute to spirit, which is the idea of to go. And that is also kind of something you'd associate with the Ankh as the sandal strap and that sort of thing.
Very good.
And so this is like the idea being that she'll occasionally remind us that the important thing is to keep on the move. You don't want to just, like some people stay in this house forever, for their whole lives.
Yeah. That's a constant refrain, right?
Yeah.
Whenever they're someplace. And in the path of, when they're navigating the path of the sun, the path of Resh, they encounter something very, very much like the tarot card, with a green hill and a gate around it and a couple of fairies and all the children dancing and playing. And it seems wonderful. And the fairy prince tells her that the important thing is to go. Like, as long as you're traveling, you're okay.
Yeah.
It's the people who stay here and play that are having that are having a problem. And you think, what could the problem possibly be? Like the image on the card is of the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
But Crowley's idea of the dynamic feature of existence is really, really important in Thelema. And this goes back to my opening gamut, right? Like Heva creates the world by transgressing, and sort of doesn't exist beyond the state of like animal stasis, just like eating the food that's available to her and wandering around naked and never procreating and just, having this pleasant dream. It's the transgression that wakes her up and puts her into a world that's more real, a world of sense perceptions and a world of toil where you have to work for what you get. And actually there's a way in which that punishment is an apt reward for what she is, for what she's after, because if she's aspiring, if we imagine, I know it's supposed to be the serpent cons her, but if we imagine her as aspiring, as all these sort of princess figures do, then that the natural consequence of that is hard work. So to say, oh, you'll now have pain during childbirth and have to work to till the land to feed yourself, it's like, fine. Like that's the that's the objective.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So we kind of see this this worldview where we're transvaluing previous values in a sense, where we're turning things into, you could parse this in the sort of Golden Dawn way, where we have on the Tree of Life, we have the fall from the Garden of Eden, and we now find ourselves in a post-fall kind of situation where we're trying to climb back up to the top of the tree. And this is reframing, it seems like you could parse it as reframing that as, that's sort of what happens, but that's good. And we want to continue that process. So going up and down the tree, essentially, it's almost like the systole and diastole of the heart, as described in Liber Libellum and that sort of thing.
One must imagine Sisyphus happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Who's that guy? What's that guy? He's a French guy. Who the hell knows?
Is that Sartre, or that's the only French guy I know?
Camus,
I
think.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
We're very erudite.
Yeah,
we both know who Camus is.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a little bald kid, right? Oh, that's Caillou.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Caillou.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I always picture him too. That's weird.
It looks the same, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's a cartoon character.
One must imagine Sisyphus happy. You're exactly right. I did kind of start going through chronologically. I don't know that we need to do that because, like I said, most of the connecting paths are just images of the tarot cards.
Yeah.
So we can visit the ones that are most thelemically interesting in the way that you're hoping to do. I think that's a very good idea and will save us a lot of time. Yeah. But I do also want to go through the chapters on the two initiations, the visit to Tefereth.
So essentially I was going to say the neophyte, but then you're thinking the adeptus initiation.
The neophyte. Is the neophyte good? We can talk about the neophyte if you want to.
It's not that I want to. It's just that was the first thing that came to mind. But
I think all that happens with the neophyte is she gets the astral vision for the first time and is introduced to the palace and told that like the bathrooms are over here.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it is interesting because it's very, very clearly Malkuth, right? Like
the four colors.
The bathrooms are painted olive. The kitchen is painted citrine. The bedrooms are painted russet, and then there's this black area.
Yeah, the tunnel on the way in or whatever is all black.
Well, there's this. I think the tunnel is the path of Tav.
Adeptus, yeah.
But the
servants' quarters.
The black area is like the servants' quarters where all the work is done. Mm-hmm. And then, in
forming monsters in darkness.
But in the footnotes, even though it's Malkuth, it's called the Qliphoth. It's called the shells of the dead. So we have specifically the black quadrant. So we have again this analogy between the real world, the world of sense impressions that we all reside in, the kingdom, and the Qliphoth, the shells of the dead, so that we exist. Our natural state is to exist in this dead world, just like when the princess in 418 starts to shed creation. It's all those, it's
so like
all
the
those
porcelains
calcified forms, like literally big hunks of hollow calcium that we, like literal shells. And so I thought that was interesting that there was that kind of relationship there between like a very Qliphothy quadrant of Malkuth and the idea that all of creation is, that when Virgo Mundi creates creation, she's creating the shells of the dead.
Which implies this sort of Platonic idea of like the Platonic forms that they have their correspondence in these Qliphotic dead shell versions or something like that.
It might also be worth visiting a couple of the Sephiroth because those aren't very tarot-like, but we don't have to visit all of them. We might even get a sense of them just by the three that I've already mentioned, just by going from Netzach to Tefereth to Binah. I mean, people can, if we're going to suggest people use these as meditation guides, they can visit many of these places on their own just by reading the text.
And doing that, like reading the text, like this podcast is obviously not a substitute for reading the text, and I don't think we should sound like we're discouraging people from bothering or anything like that, like by being too dismissive of it, because I think there's a lot to get out of thinking of this as an initiatory path and the kind of like symbolic of what you can kind of expect to some extent or another on your journey. So we have that out of the way, but then you wanted to look at the moving into the Adeptus sort of sphere.
I thought it was important what you said about doing something, like I was sort of saying discouraging dream work as a prelude to astral travel, like just do astral travel the way Crowley says to do it. And you said, well, you have to do something, right? And so this begins with the gift of a ring from the angel, and then Lola writing a song where she's praying over the ring, and so I thought that was kind of important to have to just mention that she's done a few things. She's got this ring, God knows from where, and she's written a prayer, an invocation to her holy guardian angel, and she's written it with a form in mind. She says it has 5 verses because his name has 5 V's. Verse also starts with V, in case you're not literate. And that she repeats this prayer over and over again whenever she wants to wake up. And she's written it in code, so she's also done some work to learn some occult symbols, like there's a triangle instead of the word fire, and there's a circle with a dot instead of the word sun. So she's done a few things. She's procured some tools. She's done some ritual work. She's studied the relevant documents, and so she's in a way prepared herself for this initiation, but only in a cursory way. And then she goes to work. She actually starts reading these prayers and trying to do the wake-up thing and meet her wake-up person.
Yeah, speaking of which, like with the decode, should we talk about the decode or leave that for people? Because there's one portion of it that I hadn't sorted out, and I don't know. I'm kind of curious if you had.
Oh, the circle plus Oyen 777 Greek?
Camelon, which is camel, but it's like the objective case of the camel. I kind of guessed at the circle plus is sort of rose and rude, so like as in wand, because blood and rude, I mean, they don't rhyme, but I mean, there's poetic license that you could take with that. But I don't know about the Oyen. I would assume that would be but I don't, and maybe 777 would be sword for the flaming sword, but I can't quite make Camelon into something that rhymes with far, which I would assume would follow the metric, the meter.
No, I did not figure this out. Rod and what did you say?
Rose and rude.
Rose and rude is very good because it does rhyme. For thou hast shown me rose and rude. I sword but 777 might be something other than sword. So this is going to remain a bit of a mystery, I guess,
for us at least. Anyway.
But for at least for now. The first of them, of the interesting paths, I mean, they're all interesting, is the path of the Last Judgment, the path of Shin, the path of the, I guess it's called the Aeon in the Thoth Tarot. And it's different than what's on the card because it shows, because in Lola's Daydream, it's row upon row of coffins and people waking up. We've already said it's an interesting analog to what's in the Lilith book, the MacDonald book that we already read. I don't have much more to say about it than that. Do you have any thoughts on the
Not really.
the paths?
Yeah, I mean the main paths I find kind of interesting are like the devil path and the death path.
Yeah, so let's move on to the first initiation into Ferrith because that will include all of that stuff. Let me see where we start with Netzach. Because surprisingly, she marries her fairy prince in Netzach first.
Although I don't think it's that surprising because that's like where we end up doing in the AA grade work. That's where you would be doing Liber Astarte is like the book that you'd be working with, which is devotion to a god or goddess by love.
Yeah, practicing. Hopefully you've loved many humans in your life, which is practice for your ability to love God. And so you have this relationship with a divine being, perhaps as practice for loving your HGA, in a few minutes once you get through that grade. But the fact that this is the place of the first marriage, and the marriage ceremony will take them along all of the connecting paths and all the way through into Ferrith. But it starts with, I was glad when we came to the Green Palace. It was all built of malachite and emerald, and there was the loveliest, gentlest living. And I was married to my fairy prince there, and we had the most delicious honeymoon, and I had a beautiful baby. And then I remembered myself, but only just in time, and said, "Kiss me." And he kissed me and said, "My goodness, but that was a near thing that time. My little girl very nearly went to sleep. Most people who reach this heaventh house stay there all their lives, I can tell you." It did seem a shame to go on. There was such a flashing green star light to it, and all the air was filled with amber-colored flames like kisses, and we could see through the floor, and there were terrible lions like furnaces of fury, and they all roared out, "Holy, holy, holy," and leaped and danced for joy. And when I saw myself in the mirrors, the dome was one mass of beautiful green mirrors. I saw how serious I looked, and that I had to go on. I hoped the fairy prince would look serious too, because it is most dreadful business going beyond the seventh house. But he only looked the same as ever. But oh, how I kissed him, and how I clung to him, and I think I should never, never, never have the courage to go up those dreadful passages, especially knowing what was at the end of them. And now I am only a little girl, and I am ever so tired of writing, but I'll tell you all about the rest. And so that's the sort of end of part one with their resting in Netzach and the beginning of their marriage. And she says she had, again, there's this same sort of dream logic that there was in the George MacDonald story, because, and that it kind of a little bit in the way there is in Twin Peaks: The Return, where we bounce around through time and stories don't quite connect to each other. So if they get married and have a baby in Netzach, but then we never mention the baby again, and she gets impregnated into Ferrith, and then we'll finally have the baby when she gets to Binah. So there's these kind of like little
it's kind of like the
things going
factor.
on. So this is kind of the character of the way the palaces are described. They all have colors and atmosphere and geography and features. They often have a spirit you can interact with. It's important when you're doing astral travel. I don't always do this, but it's helpful if you can remember to call for guides and interrogate guides and ask to be shown various things. So when you read this book, you can see who the guides might be for the various paths, and then try to imagine them and encounter them as you're, I was about to say daydreaming, but that's not right. So there, a little bit of the character of what it's like to be what it's like to read through this book there. Any thoughts on the Netzach?
Well, I mean, mainly just the fact that, yeah, again, what you're talking about, it's nice to keep that in mind as you're reading through this, instead of just reading it dryly and trying to get through it because you have to move on to the next book. It is important to keep going. From book to book to book, but at the same time, yeah, if you're sort of thinking of this from the point of view of doing astral journeys and, you know, path working of the tree or initiation up the tree and that sort of thing, it helps you to categorize stuff and familiarize yourself with these different paths and things, which is actually important work in and of itself. The whole tree of life is a good framework. It's like developing your own language, and that takes familiarity and working to actually make it real and conversational.
That's right. And then we begin part 2. I was telling you how we started from the Green Palace. There are 3 passages that lead to the treasure house of gold, and all of them are very dreadful. You know, I just realized in Pistis Sophia, the above the aeons, there's 12 more emanations that are called the treasury of light. So this word treasure is repeated here. Mm-hmm. Treasury of light. The treasure house of gold, and all of them are very dreadful. One is called Terror by Night, and another Arrow by Day, and the third has a name that people are afraid to hear, so I won't say it.
I will death.
And so this is kind of the first thing you wanted to visit, so we're finally done doing it. But in the first, we came to a mighty throne of gray granite, shaped like the sweetest pussycat you ever saw, and set up on a desolate heath. It was midnight, and the devil came down and sat in the midst, but the fairy prince whispered, "Hush! It is a great secret, but his name is Yeshua, and he is the savior of the world." And that was very funny, because the girl next to me thought it was Jesus Christ, till another fairy prince, my prince's brother, whispered as he kissed her, "Hush! Tell nobody ever that is Satan, and he is the savior of the world."
Yeah, that's a really important little, nice little detail regarding the devil card.
Yeah, what do you think of all that?
Well, I've also heard it put, I think it was, what's the Boda guy?
Paul Foster Case?
Yeah, Paul Foster Case. I think he has like this idea that he talks about it being the devil card. If you could see the exact backside of the devil card, you'd be looking at God. So it's like this idea carrying over in this place as well, where it's like, but it's also, of course, that, you know, equating the snake in the Garden of Eden with the Messiah, because you have the Hebrew words for those Nechesh and Messiah they enumerate to the same thing. So it's sort of showing that this fall is tied to redemption. So it's almost like the fall enables the possibility for redemption, or this sort of divine status to be taken on.
I think when I first read this, I thought it was really cool. First of all, it's like a nice moment in the text, and it reminded me of Jeremy Crow's thing about Prometheus, right? About how, in Milton, the fallen angel Lucifer becomes the devil and makes war on God, but is sort of a sympathetic character. But if you look at older versions of this same story, it's very often giants that are trying to give something to mankind that they will need in order to prosper, and the gods see this as an offense. And so Prometheus gives fire to mankind, which previously was only possessed by the Olympians, and that is sort of that's like the apple, right? Like they that wakes them up and makes them able to do things like metallurgy and makes them able to work appropriately in the world. And then for this, Prometheus is punished, tied to the side of a mountain. Maybe like Jesus, maybe mounted on a cross and having an eagle come and eat his liver every day and so forth. And so there's a way in which this fallen Lucifer archetype, it's not just because of a war in heaven, it's because of something the devil was trying to do for us in this role of the savior of the world. But since then, reading it this time, I'm thinking more about this relationship between Abrasax Abraxas and Yaldabaoth, and how devils become gods by creating the world, and that there's and so that if our God that rules our universe is the bad guy, then maybe the devil is the good guy, or something like how the serpent of the garden for Gnostics is seen as Jesus. There's this kind of rolling continuum. Many reasons that the identities of who are confused, and it might be tough to tell who's really on your side. And Thelema is Gnostic, so Gnostics should believe that the God of the universe is the devil, but then and so maybe there's a devil figure like the serpent in the garden who might be Jesus, but so like whoever's against God is the good guy trying to save you from the universe. But then there's an even weirder thing that happens in Crowley, which I've mentioned before, where even acknowledging that Yaldabaoth is the devil, he still gets worshipped in a few places, like in the Gnostic Mass. And so that's I don't know. It's very interesting the way these things roll in Thelema.
And another way to sort of take it is sort of as you're approaching Tifereth, you have like you're approaching the sun, but the shadow cast by the sun, because it's direct sunlight, you have a hard shadow as a result. So the blackness of that shadow might be frightening, you know, as you're approaching this next level. So the idea being that you might feel like you're actually approaching the devil and everything that's, you know, frightening to you and that sort of thing. So it's being able to pierce beyond that. And actually a fun consideration is the fact that the sort of magical power, or the power of the devil card associated with it, is the power of mirth, and the idea that like laughter can break that spell of fear, you know?
Sort of an analog of what we saw in 418 with the White King and his black slave being maybe Chaos, maybe Abrasax, and maybe Choronzon in the Abyss or something, whatever that God with the 1,000 hands was, you know, creating the universe so that he could destroy it. Transpose that lower down on the tree, and you have, you know, Tifereth and the devil leading from Netzach to...
Yeah, I mean, we have... This is like... at this stage of the initiatory path, we're crossing Paroketh, the Veil of Paroketh. And there is some analogy to be made between the Veil of Paroketh and the Abyss. It's not the same thing. There's a big difference, but at the same time, there's an analogy to be made. Crowley talks about this crossing of Paroketh. We saw that in Liber 65. He was sort of using that analogy, where it's like, you could fail in this process, and he couldn't see a situation where you wouldn't be able to just try again, even if it's, you know, in a future lifetime or something like that.
Right.
But the abyss crossing failure would be a little bit more definitive than that.
She goes on to say, we were a very great company. I can't tell you all of the strange things we said and did, or the songs we sang or danced or face outward in a great circle, ever closing on the devil and on the throne. This is what you're saying about mirth, right? The pleasure of dancing. But whenever I saw a toad or a bat or some horrid insect, my fairy prince always whispered, "It is the savior of the world." And I saw that it was so. It just occurs to me to remember that Lola being the key of delights is also the word sorrow, and so there's this same sort of rolling feeling going on here. And then they go on. I don't know if I need to read the whole thing because it's gross, but they go on to have a cannibal feast of all they girls cut off chops and steaks from their own bodies and gave them to beautiful white cook at a silver grill that was lighted with the gas of dead bodies and marshes. And
specifically ugly kinds of ideas. And
well, the food is apparently very good. But it's the preparation of it is gruesome, and it is the sacrifice of both girls and children. They're eating infants, and then living people are cutting bits of their flesh off to share.
So it's horrifying, but they're enjoying it as it's like one of these witches' Sabbath kind of scenarios.
Well, I'm also thinking about the continuity that we talked about before, about how there's very, very old stories about, the world being created from the corpse of a giant, and then we refresh the world with sacrifices of cattle. And then, Jesus's sacrifice means we no longer have to sacrifice cattle. And then the Thelemic sacrifice, where we use our own blood, and so we become both the priest and king, because the sacrifice giant is seen as the first king, because he literally is the kingdom. The crown is in the kingdom, but after another manner. There's this continuity here. And so what's being celebrated is maybe the original feast back before these stories began being told. If you're telling people not to do human sacrifice and to sacrifice cattle instead, perhaps there's a reason they need to hear this message. And so it's the original authentic Sabbath that's taking place under the guise of a demonic ritual, under the auspices of the devil.
Yeah, it seems like the aversion aspect is important here. Like the fact that these are horrifying images, and yet, at the same time, it's this mirthful kind of engagement with things and that sort of thing. So I think that's super important to the imagery that's going on here.
Remember that one of the attributes of the fairy prince is that he doesn't perceive change. He sees everything as one unified continuity, right? That's why he never laughs, never cries, never smiles, because he doesn't have the surprises that would be required for an emotional response. And she says here, when she's at the feast, "You must remember I never let go of my fairy prince for a single instant, or of course I should have been turned into a horrid black toad." So she's able to celebrate this feast by retaining an attitude of enlightened detachment, the connection to the fairy prince, realizing that the world is one continuous thing that neither changes or evolves, or it's Parmenides consciousness.
Yeah, it's kind of like again on the some of the tarot cards will have like the devil figure on the card will be holding up his right hand, and he'll have a Saturn symbol on it.
Yeah.
And there's an analogy to be made here between the Sephira Bina, which is attributed to Saturn, and the idea of universal sorrow, the vision of universal sorrow, and being able to turn that into the vision of universal joy. So having that kind of a parallel there.
After anything else you want to say about the Sabbath?
Nah.
They now talk about the path of the arrow by day, which looks very much like the art card of the Thoth Tarot. The only
alchemical combinations.
She moves down to talk about the third path that we're not supposed to mention. My fairy prince said, "Everybody that ever was has come along this path, yet only one ever got to the end of it." And I just wanted to bring that up because I wanted you to tell me what it means. I have no idea what that's supposed to be.
That's actually one of my favorite things about this is that, the one that only ever one gets to the end of it. I think what's being alluded to here is the idea that at root, there is only one. All of us at root are that same one. So even though there's a myriad of people going through this continuous sequence of life and death, at the end of it, you only have that one that's experiencing life through every one of those points. To finish that paragraph just with that in mind, let's see if that actually bears itself out. So everybody that ever was come along this path, and yet only one ever got to the end of it. But I saw a lot of people walking straight through as if they knew it quite well. He explained, though, that they were really only one, and if you walked through, that proved it. I thought that was silly, but he's much older and wiser than I am, so I said nothing. The truth is that it is a very hard palace to talk about, and the further you get in, the harder it is to say what you mean, because it all has to be put into dream talk, as of course the language of the wake world is silence. So, like one of the ideas that comes to mind, it sort of seemed to me, building on what I'm suggesting there, is like the idea that if you're looking at the creation of the tree of life as essentially the manifestation of God's consciousness, in a sense, or the unfolding of God's consciousness, if you have nothing initially, then one establishes the idea of oneness, and then two establishes the idea of self and other. So God becomes conscious of self and other. And then by being able to perceive this relationship of self and other, you have this third point of view. And then we start to break down into three-dimensional reality and that sort of thing. So it's almost like God, in seeking to have self-understanding, creates these images like reflections of God's self, and they progressively move on and that sort of thing. And then that eventually produces these veils that distract us from this inner starriness.
I can't remember which book it was we read, but there's an idea that we are each microcosms of our own macrocosm, but that as our microcosms become more and more perfect, studying more and more of the images of our sense impressions and get a more and more complete picture of the world we live in, that those different macrocosms of different individuals tend to sort of have more and more of an overlap, so that if you could perfect your microcosm, you would only be in one macrocosm. So that, and I wonder and as we were talking about God emanating so that he could be seen from the perspective of the other, and God consciousness doing the tree of life, I wondered about what the 19th century Vedantists used to call Christ consciousness. Yogananda and those guys, that we all partook of a kind of Christ consciousness, or like yoga consciousness, and that as our microcosms get closer and closer to perfection, we become more and more mirror images of the one macrocosm, such that at root we become the same person. Once we reflect the thing that is true, then our truth is the universal truth, and there's that one like adept self. We're all partaking of the form of adepthood as we it's like cross the path of Nun.
Yeah, it's like the idea that
Nun Scorpio.
Nun is Scorpio, yes. Yeah, and like it's the idea that equilibrating the path of initiation is like an equilibrating of the personality initially, as we're working our way towards Tifereth. So by the time you reach Tifereth, ideally you've equilibrated the personality, the self, and it's almost like, to your point, it's kind of like as if you've basically calibrated yourself as a mirror to reflect more purely that divine. So you have this idea of similar to the idea of crossing the abyss in the first place. You're supposed to give up the personality, and there's plenty of people who have contentions with that, where they see that as like, well, why should you give up? Why can't you build up the ego and build up the personality and strengthen yourself and that sort of thing? They see it as threatening to give up the personality. But I think this seems to again allude to that idea that by releasing all that as rent garments, so to speak, as we saw in the Aether number 9, it's sort of like then you are able to see, as it says in One Star in Sight regarding that passage, it's like you give up what you thought was the personality in order to reveal the truer self. So it's almost like that divine thing is more truly understood. And recognized and that sort of thing. And perhaps that deeper thing is, it seems like when you cross the abyss, your concerns are more universal.
Right.
So it makes sense that that's like you're actually tied to a more universal self.
The title of Nemo or No One, and then this idea of Vivere Universum Vivus Victi, who, if Crowley is not even a master of the temple yet when he's writing this, that isn't his personal identity yet. That's the person who's dictating the other Class A documents.
Yeah.
And so maybe the one person who ever actually got across the path of Nun is VVVVV. That in the 19th century it used to be called Christ consciousness, but as we move into the 20th century it can be called adept consciousness or
VVVV
consciousness. Yeah, because because Crowley's the new Jesus.
It's Crowleyanity, folks.
Which I guess I'm fine with. So now we start drifting towards the 6th house and have the initiation into Ferrith proper. She, not I, but she skips over the Veil of Parakath because she feels like she probably shouldn't bother telling you about it. And we've already discussed the Veil of Parakath when we talked about the series finale of Twin Peaks. So that's good enough for me.
So if you put your mouth to her head and your hand ... then you'll understand that if you actually experience it, then you'll know what she's talking about. So Parakath, it gives the Hebrew letters, which incidentally, the meanings of each of those letters is mouth, head, hand, and cross. But we all know what Crowley's favorite correspondences for Tav and Yod are. So
yeah, sure. You can read. Is it Richard Payne Knight? No, that's Varieties of Religious Experience. What's the one?
No, that's not Richard Payne Knight. That's William James.
Oh, so Richard Payne Knight. I must be right then. It's Essays on the Worship of Priapus. And you get all those little dicks with faces on them and stuff.
Now I'm just picturing, you get this book called Essays on the Worship of Priapus, and then you open it up and it's just childish scrawlings all over the pages.
It's like it is an essay, like it's academic literature, but there are a lot of ink plates of various images of faces, crucifixes, and dicks, but then like dicks that are also crucifixes. Actually, the ROM has a great one. There's an icon of Shiva at the ROM, which is a penis, and the head of the penis is the head of Shiva.
Oh, cool.
It's really cool.
Nice.
Anyway, not to be put too fine a point on it, so to speak. Jesus. There's some accidental humor for you.
Yeah.
Why is the now? Maybe this is a reference to something very specific that happened in the Golden Dawn, but why is the actual doorway into Tifereth so small that you have to crawl on your hands and knees and still scrape the skin off your back? That I didn't understand at all. The other things that were more like Christian-y, where she's nailed to a four-armed cross and given not given lashes, but sort of bent backwards over a golden.
Sometimes her arms go back.
Yeah, her arms bent back. Good job. Those things that were more sort of like Jesus-y, I understood. But what's with this crawling?
Well, I guess it's like, I don't know, but I'm going to say that it's like probably worth considering the Adeptus Minor initiation and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So you can find that stuff in the Equinox. I think it's volume 1 or number 1 volume. I always forget if it goes number or volume first in the thing there, but it's like volume 1, number 2, I believe is where we have, possibly number 3 where we have the initiation of the Adeptus Minor. But yeah, it's a lot tied up with that. So I think that's probably the safest way to sort of find correspondences for these.
Yeah, because when she just goes on to describe the Vault of the Adepts and things, it's all pointing pretty bluntly at the Golden Dawn ceremony. So you're right. Maybe there's some ordeal of scraping as you go through that.
Yeah, there's a lot of torture and it's basically reenacting the process of death and resurrection and these kinds of ideas.
First, there is a tiny, tiny, tiny doorway you must crawl through on your hands and knees, and even then I scrape ever such a lot of skin off of my back, and then you have to be nailed to a red board with 4 arms, and there is a great golden circle in the middle that hurts you dreadfully, and they make you swear the most solemn things you ever heard of, how you would be faithful to the fairy prince, and live for nothing but to know him better and better, so the nails stopped hurting. Because, of course, I saw that I was really being married, and this was part of it, and I was glad as glad, and at that moment my fairy prince put his hand upon my head, and I tell you, honor bright, it was more wake-up than ever before, even when he used to kiss me. After that, they said I could go on to the bridal chamber, and there's some footnotes here that describe the events as execution, and then the sepulchre, and the bridal chamber as the grave.
Mm-hmm. And we have this is Rosicrucian kind of imagery. Like we have the tomb of Christian Rosenkreuz and these kinds of ideas.
Let's see if there's anything else we want to read here. There's an important point later on where after she's been in the bridal chamber for a while, she's taken to a ritual room where there's an altar, and beneath the altar is like a treasure box, and the treasure box is meant to be. It slowly dawns on her via dreamlike logic that maybe the treasure box could be a tomb, and then when it's opened, because she's imagined it is a tomb, and they open the casket, and the fairy prince is dead inside.
And actually, that's another one of those notes that I feel like it'd be helpful to correct here, because it says Pastos Patris Nostril, CRC. It's obviously a misprint or a spell check sort of correction. It should be Nostri, which is Latin for hour. So as in Pastos Patris Nostri, CRC. So the Pastos of our father, Christian Rosenkreuz, and not nostril. And the translation there says meals of our father, which meals...
this was mystifying.
Yeah, because Pastos, again, you could see how that's a corruption of taking that from one of the Latin words related to food or eating, but it's this is specific to something that's sort of tied up with masonry, I think.
Okay.
It's the pastos. It's a particular item. It's this sort of altar that turns out to be a crypt or a tomb.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So pastos specifically means treasure box or altar with maybe it means like
I guess
with a dead object inside.
Yeah. So exactly.
Yeah. And let's look at this because it's kind of fun. Okay, so she starts. So when she goes to the bridal chamber, she ties a chain around her neck to hang herself. Not to hang herself, but just to the consequences that she sort of choked. But the idea is that it's a sign of devotion somehow. And then she finds a dagger and a cup of wine, and she dips the dagger in the wine and stabs herself all over with it to prove that she's no longer afraid of suffering. I was not afraid to be hurt if only I could find my fairy prince, she says. And then I took the crucifix and held it up to make more light in case there was somewhere in the dark corners, but no, yet I knew there was somewhere. So I thought he must be in the box. Under the table was a great chest, and I was terribly sad because I felt something dreadful was going to happen. And sure enough, when I had the courage, I asked them to open the box, and the same people that made me crawl through the horrid hole and lost my fairy prince and nailed me to the red board and took away the table and opened the box, and there was my fairy prince quite dead. If only you knew how sorry I felt. But I had with me a walking stick with wings and a shining sun at the top that had been his, and I touched him on his breast to try to wake him, but it was no good. I only seemed to hear his voice saying wonderful things, and it was quite certain he wasn't really dead. So I put the walking stick on his breast, and another thing that he had, which I had forgotten to tell you about, it was a kind of cross with an oval handle that he had been very fond of. but I couldn't go away without something of his, so I took his shepherd's staff and the little whip with blood on it and the jewels oozing from the blood, you know what I mean, that they had to put his hands on when I buried him. And then I went away and cried and cried and cried. And so there's all these sort of failed attempts to do some resurrection magic. And what is this? A little jewel with blood on it and jewels oozing from the blood, you know what I mean. Is this like Twin Peaks where everything's a vagina? Is that what's going on with the little jewel with blood on it?
Yeah, it's questionable, right? It's another one of those things that obviously it's alluding to something. And,
that they had to put his hands on when they buried him. Mm-hmm. And she goes away and cries. And
it kind of seems like, okay, she's gonna go away and cry, and then this is where they're going to come out and basically say like, no, what are you upset about? It's fine.
Yeah.
He's actually fine. But basically it sounds like in that context, it's almost like an alchemical process, right? We're putting these apparently dead things into a chest and leaving them where there's like blood oozing out and gems, if you know what I mean. So that we're leaving it for a time, and then we're not opening it before the bun is finished cooking in the oven, kind of, so to speak. And so, yeah, it sounds kind of like that kind of thing where, you know.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's interesting is that she is crucified and then he dies. Mm-hmm. And so and then when the resurrection comes to happen, like she, having been crucified and stabbed to death and choked, then has to come and do the resurrection on him. For some reason, I'm thinking about the three women that visit the tomb of Jesus and find the sepulchre empty, and then run away and never tell anyone, but somehow the whole thing gets written down.
Yeah.
And
that's where I think that Latin line is probably from. Cur inter mortuos vivum petes, non est hic ille resurrexit, which is again, my translation of that is why would you seek him? Why would you seek the living amongst the dead? This is not him. He is resurrected. So I think that's specifically from that story in the New Testament. So
yeah, very good, good spot. I kind of want to say more about this, but it's getting hard.
Okay, I was just about to make a correspondence to sort of a sexual analogy, and now I'm going to giggle like a schoolgirl because you're saying getting hard. I was just going to say, like, because you mentioned the fact that she's the one who's being sort of tortured and killed in that, and then he's the dead one and that sort of thing. It sort of just makes me think of like, this is kind of like as they're closing in on each other, it's like mutual death in orgasm in a sense.
Oh yeah, that's good because because he's like edging.
Yeah.
so like when he's dead in the coffin, he's flaccid and she's trying to res erect him. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, and then other things need to be talked
and it'll
about.
take a while too, because there's mention of the car of millions of years.
Yeah,
Dude, lots of edging.
Yeah,
a universe, an eternity of edging. Psychola, psycholorum.
Do we need to do anything more about Tefereth?
No, I mean we have mention of. I know too what INRI on the ring meant, and I can't tell you that either. Because the dream language has such a lot of important words missing. There will be later on explanation breaking a little bit down on INRI and TARO, which also appears on the ring. So INRI and Tarot.
I guess it's not breaking any oaths to say that INRI is Yeshua Nazarene Rex Judea, or something like that, Jesus Christ, King of the Jews, which I'm not a Catholic, so I didn't know until like I knew the analysis of the keyword from the hexagram ritual before I knew what the keyword meant.
Yeah.
So I think that's helpful. And then, if you want to know one of the things that it means, you can look up Liber O and the analysis of the keyword from the hexagram ritual. But I suspect that she has a good deal more than that in mind.
Yeah, and actually, I think part of the breakdown that comes up in here is, corresponds to what's in the hexagram ritual. So it'll be on par with that to one extent or another. But yeah, and it's like that image INRI is like often depicted at the top, at the head of the cross of the crucifixion. So again, bringing us to, making the correspondence with the crucifixion of Christ and the adepti grade.
So now we're moving into, you've already mentioned that it's the Mountain of Abby Agnes. That's good, where Christian Rosencreutz is buried.
There is an interesting section where it's sort of talking about how suddenly she starts to get an image of things from the outside of the tree. And so she's looking around and seeing that each of the other houses all claim to be the first house. And so she gives an example of these advertisements. They're sort of like real estate advertisements outside of the houses or something. And one of them says, "First house, this is His Majesty's favorite residence. No other genuine. Beware of worthless imitations. Come in here and spend life. Come in here and see the serpent eat his tail." So I was furious, as you may imagine, and had men go out and put all the proper numbers on them, and a little sarcastic remark to make them ashamed. So they read, for instance, 5th house, and mostly dream at that. 7th house, external splendor and internal corruption, and so on. And on each one I put, no thoroughfare from here to the first house. The only way is out of doors, by order.
So this is a really great analog to what happens in the Pistis Sophia, where Christ has to go and visit all of the aeons and take from each of the archons a third of their power to sort of juice himself up, like, get all the experience points so he can unlock the next cool skin or whatever.
That way he gets to be a third of the Trinity as well.
Yeah. So he's, and so now that, by now, Lola is an exempt adept. She's made herself all the way up to Chesed and is being told that, she's done a great job of administering the elemental degrees, but now she needs to learn to administer all 7 Sephira before she can go on to the next place. And she says, "What do you mean? Everything's working fine." Yeah. And then, just like in the Pistis Sophia, the aeons are rebelling. And she needs to take a little tour and go in and correct the mistake. Internally, they seem to be working fine, but externally, there's these advertisements.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's a nice analogy too, because it's kind of like one of the things you run into all the time with people into spirituality and all that sort of thing, or even whatever it may be. There's always like you have some kind of attainment. Maybe you have a Malkuth attainment, maybe you have a Yesod or Hud or Netzach attainment, and then suddenly it goes to your head and you feel like I've like attained to the limits, and now I'm a teacher, now I'm exalted and all this sort of thing. It's a good analogy for that as well.
I mean, there's a couple of grades I've got to in a couple of different orders where I feel like I might stay here for the rest of my life.
So I know it can feel like that sometimes.
The caution is well taken, and also by making them like placards on the outside of the buildings, by making them advertisements rather than anything spooky. Crowley also gets to make a sort of oblique critique of middle-class values.
Yeah.
I found another place in here. That is why dream people never see beautiful things like I'm telling you about. All their houses are built of common red bricks, and they sit in them all day and play silly games with counters, and oh, dear me, how they do chat and quarrel. When anyone gets 1,000,000 counters, he is so glad he can't think, and goes away and tries to change some of the counters for things he really wants, but he can't. And so you nearly die of laughing. Though, of course, it would be really sad if it were wake life. So in the real world of Maya, our world of sense impressions, our dream. We play games, have jobs until we make $1 million, and then we go try to buy the things we want. So far, it seems like, yes, but then it says you can't buy the things you really want. And so, like, why is that? There's the old proverb that money doesn't buy happiness. I mean, poverty certainly buys misery. So, like, what are you talking about? I do want a steak dinner, so I can buy that. But this word really is important. The thing you really want, which for Lola Daydream and for Thelemites and for other occultists and for the real people, the thing you really want is perhaps some degree of initiation. You're seekers after truth, and you don't get to truth by your sense impressions or by trading at markets.
Yeah, you can have money and it can seem to buy you all the happiness in the world, but you can still be miserable, anxious, suffering. Or you can have money and it can seem to buy you all the things in the world, and you can be, have enough personal balance where you're able to enjoy it without it causing you to suffer in all those ways as well. So it's like money by itself is not the full equation, in other words.
But we're burning daylight, so let's deal with the initiation in the abyss. Let's see if we can find it.
I do want to quickly, I don't know, I think that's a little later on from here. There's because we also have that sort of breakdown of tarot and INRI. I just wanted to mention, I'm not going to go fine-tooth comb with all these notes and stuff like that, but I just wanted to catch one as well where it's like, on mine, page 43, note 3, it's basically starts with Kartai Tarot, which is the tarot cards. It's referencing the 78 because she's saying something like it has 78 parts, and the palace has 78 parts, so the Tree of Life has 78 parts. So basically attributed to all the 78 cards of the tarot. And then Bel Egyptiorum, which is the Egyptian tarot cards. INRI equals, and then it gives the Hebrew correspondences to those letters, Yud, Nun, Resh, Yud, and then that corresponds to the astrological equivalents of Virgo, Scorpio, and Sun. And we have Virgo twice, of course, showing up in INRI. And that equates to IAO, and that equates to LVX. So again, it's sort of walking through the analysis of the keyword from the, as you were saying, from the hexagram ritual. And LVX is lux, that's the Latin word for light, but it equates to Adonai, or actually I guess it's saying that Adonai equals, and it says 6G, which I have to assume is like, again, a misprint because that makes no sense whatsoever. I'm assuming the G is supposed to be a 5, a rendering of, like a misrendering of the 5, so you'd have 65, because Adonai, the Hebrew Aleph, Daleth, Nun, Yud, enumerates to 65, and then it says LVX equals LXV. So it's just rearranging those into the Roman numeral 65. So just wanted to point that out, because 6G, I'm assuming that's a misprint, because there's no reason that would make any sense aside from being a misprint of 65.
You're absolutely right. It's got to be 65. Anyway, the reason, so we transliterate I and RI into Hebrew, get Hebrew letters. The reason these astrological glyphs come next is because of the tarot correspondences, and then also
the Sefer Yetzirah attributes the astrological correspondences to the Hebrew letters specifically. So
good. And then
just the way you said that, like, good.
And then the gods that are associated with these astrological glyphs, the first letters of their names are IAO, and then there are secret signs which makes the shapes LVX. So it's by pretty esoteric methods that we get here, but it flows if you follow the shape.
Mm-hmm. Which is all stuff that's revealed, like these signs and everything, and the analysis of the keyword is integral to the Adeptus Minor initiation, which again, it's like maybe I'm telling tales at a school, but not really, because it was published by Crowley in the Equinox. So, and I think it's like, for people who are interested in this stuff, it's important to go back and look at the neophyte initiation and some of the Golden Dawn rituals that he published there, because he thought it was important, but it's important for context, for understanding all of this stuff.
I don't remember the rituals being published in full in Temple of Solomon the King. I know that they are, all the moments are beaded out, and there's single phrases quoted sometimes that say like, hey, at this point in the ritual, this is what it means. But I don't think the rituals are published in full in a public way until Regardie. Am I wrong about that?
They're pretty much published by Crowley, but it's like there may be certain aspects of them that are. I think it's a lot of the grade material that you would then also be given was published by Regardie in addition to.
I have to read through that Equinox 1 and 2 again, because I must just be remembering it wrong, because I was specific. People like to say Crowley published all these rituals, and when I actually read through it, I thought like he didn't. There's no way anyone who hadn't been through these rituals would understand any of this.
Yeah, well,
but I might be wrong.
That's the thing. There's a certain amount of it that is like, you're right. So it's not necessarily.
It's not like a script.
It's not. It's not giving it to you in the way that Regardie
this quotation, this quotation.
Yeah, but there's enough there that it gives you context for understanding. Stuff like this. So I think it's important, because otherwise reading through stuff like this can be a little bit opaque.
The passage where the twins live is interesting, but let's skip over it. People can read that on their own. Let's go to, but the real serious difficulty is outdoors. You have to leave the house of love, as they call the fourth house. You are quite naked. You must take off your husband clothes, and your baby clothes, and all your pleasure clothes, and your skin, and your flesh, and your bones. Every one of them must come right off. And then you must take off your feeling clothes, and then you must take off your idea clothes, and then what we call your tendency clothes, which you have always worn, which is what makes you what you are. And after that you take off your consciousness clothes, which you have always thought were your very own self, and you leap out into the cold abyss, and you can't think how lonely it is. There isn't any light or any path or anything to catch hold of to help you, and there is no fairy prince anymore, and you can't even hear the voice calling you to come in. There is nothing to tell you which way to go, and you feel the most horrible sensation of falling away from everything that ever was. You've got nothing at all. You don't know how awful it is. You would turn back if you could only stop falling, but luckily you can't. And so you fall faster and faster, and I can't tell you any more. The third house is called the House of Sorrow. I just noticed this fall faster and faster because of Fire Walk With Me, because Donna asks Laura, if you were falling through space, do you think you'd slow down eventually or just go faster and faster? And Laura says faster and faster, and the angels couldn't help you because they've all gone away, which is like a television version of exactly this speech.
It's too bad we didn't actually use this as kind of like a direct comparison, point of comparison, because it'd be fun to see if this got sort of, if it sort of like corresponds in other ways as well.
Also, the style of this being so young, like Crowley says she's 17, but she sounds like she's like 8 to 12.
Yeah. You know what it makes me think of? It's like if you read like Charles Dickens, David Copperfield, it makes me think of his silly wife. Like she's it's a very Victorian sort of sentiment of like the way that young women would be and that sort of thing. And I don't know if it's truthful to how they actually were or if it's just a stereotype. I wouldn't be surprised if young women were just in that kind of like, that was the way that society kind of inculcated the way that people acted and that sort of thing.
Maybe like if you're an aristocrat and you're trying to get, not married off, but like betrothed, like trying to have marriages arranged, like that would be something that would happen. Like, you're your 12-year-old cousin would be betrothed to like his, your 8-year-old self or something. And so if you got to 17 without being paired properly, maybe you would want to preserve some of that youthful air, so you still seemed like you were of designatable age.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean that brings to mind the idea of like Japanese culture, for instance. Like Japanese women very often have like this very high pitched way of talking and sort of particular modes of speech and stuff like that are just culturally common in that, which might be comparable maybe.
But I was going to say the Secret Diary of Laura Palmer, the first 100 or so pages of that, written by Jennifer Lynch. She's 12 when she gets her diary, and so the youthfulness and unreliability of that, the sort of dreaminess and disconnectedness and youthfulness of that, the voice. It's not the same, obviously, because this is a lot more stylized, whereas that's contemporary. But they seem like similar people, young Laura Palmer and Lola.
And it does seem to be important for this because, like, the idea of the Virgin of the world. So Virgo being, also applicable to the astrological sign Virgo, but also meaning a maiden. And so, like, it seems important to the formula of this process of initiation to have it symbolized by a virgin that's undergoing this process of becoming initiated. I guess I'll leave it at that.
The third house is called the House of Sorrow. They give me new clothes of the queerest kind because one never thinks of them as one's own clothes, but only as clothes. This is not the fault of the clothes. This is the fault of the new attitude of partaking more fully of adept consciousness, of being a master of the temple. It is the house of utmost dark. Well, and also she doesn't mean clothes. She means the new personality.
Yeah.
that
sheaths
you
that are...
you reintegrate yourself, but you no longer perceive it as being a self. It's sort of just something you happen to be wearing.
Yeah.
It is the house of utmost darkness. There is a pool of black solemn water in the shining obsidian, and one like a vast veiled figure of wonderful beauty brooding over the sea. And by the pains come upon me. I can't tell you anything about the pains, only that they are different from any other pains, because they start from inside you, from a deeper, truer kind of you than you ever knew. And by, you see a tremendous blaze of a new sun in the 6th house, and you are as glad, and there are millions of trumpets blown and voices calling, "Hail to the fairy prince," meaning the new one that you have had for your baby. And at that moment you find you are living in the first 3 houses all at once, for you feel the delight of your own dear prince and his love, and the old king stirs in his silence in the 1st house, and thousands of millions of blessings shoot out like rays of light, and everything is all harmony and beauty below, and the crowned above with the crown of 12 stars, which are the only way you can put it into dream talk. And so, again, now we're starting to see something like this woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and the crown of stars above her head. A lot of ideas coming all at once. Just remembering Frater Akkad, who believed he became an obsessionist the same weekend he became a master of the temple, and Crowley using that idea here of now being able to travel freely among the supernals because you're a master of the temple.
It is true that you get a bit of a look around, so to speak.
Yeah. I think Akkad was wrong about that, but I think the reperspectivizing that he experienced was a real reperspectivizing, and that he just kind of misunderstood it.
It's a misassessment of
But here, this is where I kind of want to talk to you a little bit in a little bit looser terms, because what's happened is that she's birthed a new fairy prince, and with the new fairy prince, the potential for a new daydreamy girl to be who remembers Virgo Mundi, the virgin that is the whole world. So this is the thing that's happening both in Pistis Sophia and in Liber 418, where we have this act of lovemaking being the thing that hollows you out and creates the whole world. So there's this is like, and I think it's cool that it doesn't come from a trespass. It's the ultimate consequence of aspiration. But so this is kind of the moment where she becomes integrated with that divine feminine archetype of Eva, of Sophia, of Lilith, of, partaking of the job of the princess. And it is also the moment of being sat upon the throne of the mother. So we were struggling to understand what that meant. Is there a better understanding now that we've kind of been through this text and especially read that paragraph with the birth pains and stuff?
Yeah. And one of the things that comes to mind for me is, again, going back to you can look at Liber. It has the signs of the grades, and we have 3 successive signs associated with the crossing of the abyss and with the Master of the Temple grade, which are the sign of Puella, which is sort of covering the genitals and breasts, and that's basically the sign of a virgin, is sort of associated with silence of crossing the abyss, as we've seen here. And then we have the sign of Mulier, which is sort of taking the attitude of a cup that's receiving whatever is coming into it. And then we have the sign of Mater, which is like the nursing of the babe. So it's like that goes into Bina. So it's following precisely with this sort of step pattern here, which is kind of fun because, this seems to be an important aspect of like going up and then creating a new birth. So it's not just a path of return and cessation or something like that.
The picture began with a grandfather in Kether who is almost never talked about. We don't hear about the old king maybe 2 times, and not until quite late in the story. And Vivira Universum Vivus Victi in Chokmah as the Magus. And with Lola all the way down in Malkuth or below in the outer world, in the world of the senses. And she is brought all the way up to Bina by her intercourse with VVVVV. And so this picture of the Tree of Life with like the father and son in Kether and Chokmah, the absent mother supposed to be in Bina, and the daughter all the way down in Malkuth. It's a distorted picture from how we usually think of it in, for example, the court cards of the tarot. But by the time we're done with this process of initiation, the old king is still in Kether, but now Lola is on the throne of the mother where she belongs, and her son is the fairy prince, and he's in Tefereth now. So we have a much more sort of traditionally appropriate arrangement of Yod He Vav He, with Yod being Kether, He being Bina, Vav being Tefereth, but maybe encompassing the whole Ruach, and then going to look for a new Nefesh to begin the process of initiation again.
Except I do think like traditionally it's Yod is actually Chokmah, with the very tip of it, the tip point being Kether.
Yeah, that's correct. Sorry. So the old father, and the old father being in Kether is sort of like, maybe that's like Saturnian, but VVVVV, I guess maybe remains in Chokmah by the end of this.
It's interesting because it's like, there's a couple of things that come to mind. With regard to that, I'll address that first. That's true. And in addition to that, it also brings to mind the idea that I think Crowley says in other places that he suggests the actual place for the Holy Guardian Angel is in the path of Gimel, coming down from Kether, but the work of the angel is kind of to work up to Kether. Yeah. So it's like achieving a union that's its own union with Kether. And then on the other point I wanted to bring up was just like what you had suggested with the mother being absent from Bina sparks off some interesting thoughts, I think, because it's almost like, yeah, you have the princess in the soul of the world in Malkuth. So it sort of says something like if you take those first three Sephiroth as the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is that absent mother who's, the soul of the world. And that brings to mind, the whole thing in the New Testament with the tongue of fire coming down and after the resurrection and that sort of thing. So, of course, we have the tongues of fire coming down and the heart of water rising up or whatnot.
But I think those details are really, really cool to think about. But I want to sort of drive home this idea of like something being wrong at the beginning, the schema being out of whack, with the father and son being both way up at the top of the tree of life, nobody in Tefereth, nobody in Bina, and the aspirant all the way down in Malkuth. And by the time the process is finished, we have a schema with Yechido where Yechido goes.
Because we still have the fairy prince in Chokmah, but we have a new fairy prince in Tifereth.
So that
helps to...
so the knight... So the fairy prince has become like the father now. So he's now where he goes. He's a knight.
Yeah.
So we got the old king and the knight, and then a new mother, and the Ruach. We finally have a Ruach now.
Yeah.
Which where we didn't have a Ruach before, and we didn't have a... Not Yechida. What's the... not Nefesh, Neshama. We didn't have a Neshama and we didn't have a Ruach. We had just Nefesh and Yachada. And now the lower instincts have met the higher aspiration and created a whole person through this path of initiation, and the fundamental activity is that of seating the daughter upon the throne of the mother.
Which is fun. It's a really cool way to cap off a lot of the stuff we've been exploring this season. So this has been a really nice way to cap it off, as a matter of fact.
And so for next month, I should maybe try to watch 2001 a couple of times.
Yeah, we'll see if that gives us anything to work with.
Great. So great. Anyway, thanks very much, Darren. This went better than I thought it was.
Likewise.
I wasn't sure what the approach was going to be with so much piecemeal information. We were talking about the Atlas of Notes for an Astral Atlas, and I said I thought this was going to be, like you have an atlas and you describe, maybe put footnotes that describe each country. But that's what this is. And so now we've visited it. And so like, I didn't want to read through a bunch of footnotes for someone's astral atlas, except that there, we were able to pull some key points and talk about what makes it interesting. And also, like you said, wrap up our theme of the last 8 months and put a stamp on it. So people, it sucks, but people should read it, and it's short, mercifully. And then when you go to do your next round of path workings, see if you can find which half paragraph relates to the path of pay, and let that inspire your Mars vision and see what happens.
Well, thanks so much for joining me as usual, and we'll look forward to some space oddity. I mean, space something or other. We'll look forward to space.
Yeah, let's go to space.
Let's go to space.
Dogecoin to the moon. Love is the law, love under will.
Love is the law, love under will. Thanks for listening. Find Toronto Thelema online. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and help us grow. And join us again in the darkly splendid abodes. Okay, switching glasses. These are my podcast glasses.
Yeah.
There's no video, but,
They allow me to see through time.
Yeah. The thing is, I can see through time without them as well.
Yeah.
I'm seeing through time at all times because time is essentially change.
Blowing my mind. Can't handle it.
I also, I don't know that you care, but I bought I keep all my holy books up here, but I have the 2 copies of the Book of the Law I bought. I'm going to try and I got those off of Amazon, so they're the good little altar copies.
Yeah.
And they only pop up from once in a blue moon, so I'm going to try when I can just to scoop up a bunch to have on hand. And I don't know if I'll use them for Toronto Thelema or if I'll use them for the OTO or just for personal, handing out to people, but kind of like just to have on hand.
Would you say Book of the Laws or Books of the Law?
Oh, good question. I guess in Latin it would be Libri Legis. So it'd be basically, I don't know why I sound Russian when I speak
Libri vel ligrium.
Libri vel legis. Vel means or, so it doesn't even need to be there really, but Liber al vel legis. Liber legis.
Libri el vel legis.
Nuclear vessels.
Billy Crystal said the key to the accent was the word microfilm.
Microfilm.
Bliss. Give me microfilm. Please. Don't make me use this gun.
Squirrel and the rabbit. It's moose and squirrel.
Moose and squirrel, that weird rabbit. No, that's not my joke, but I love how kind the secret agent is. Please.
Please.
Don't make me use this gun.
I have Canadian passport. To verify politeness level.
I have fraudulent Canadian passport. Level.
Levels of politeness.
Please give me fraudulent Canadian passport.